people like you, from all of the municipal governments where we plan to put facilities in the ground. Once we get that, we can't put anything in the ground. We have to go to the New York State Public Service Commission and again get a utility franchise for the particular area that we want to be in. So we have to get permission from the municipality first that says, we'll allow you to go in our public right-of-ways with some stipulations. That's what the franchise agreement is about. And then, once we've identified that the town of Sidney will allow us in its right-of-ways, we'll go back to people where we can source the gas from, either a pipeline or a system of wells. Then, after we do that, we go to the Public Service Commission and we say, look, we've designed a system to go from where the gas is sourced, either the pipeline or the wells, to where the demand is. And typically that demand that we look for, we call anchor customers. So somebody who uses a lot of energy. And in this particular area, the two biggest potential natural gas users that we've identified are Amphenol and Meade-Westvaco. So this is really a multi-tiered process. We want to come to the municipality first to get the right to go in their rights away. Because if we don't get that, we can't go to Meade-Westvaco or Amphenol or any other end user and say we can put a pipe in your facility. So that's why this portion is so critical. Once we get that, then we have to go to the Public Service Commission and say, we have a source of gas that is reliable. It's reliable 100% of the time. If it's reliable 100% of the time, that means it won't be interrupted under normal circumstances, and we can serve commercial and residential customers, people who are currently on propane or fuel oil. Initially, what we will attempt to do is serve customers who are dual fuel. Amphenol and Meade-Westvaco will have dual fuel capability, meaning they use propane or fuel oil now. They have burners set up in their facilities to basically switch over to natural gas or back off natural gas with a very short lead time, just a few hours. And the reason we want to be able to do that, or we want them to be able to do that, is if you're just connected to one or two wells, there may be times when those wells go down because of a water off situation. There may be times when those wells go down because of unplanned maintenance. Something happens and they have to react to it quickly. So when that would occur, what we would do is call the people up at those facilities, at the end users' facilities, and say, hey, you've got to switch over to your alternate fuel source. And then they can go about their business in an uninterrupted fashion. We can't do that with residential customers. We can't go to a residential customer who just paid $800 to have his propane orifices switched over to natural gas and say, oh, we're not going to deliver gas to you today. It doesn't work. So my long explanation is basically to identify for you that the Public Service Commission won't allow us to pipe natural gas into a private residence or a commercial residence or a commercial location that doesn't have dual fuel capability until we can show them that we can have an uninterrupted supply of natural gas. So I'm telling you this because the first targets we want to go for are these dual fuel, large potential natural gas users who are now using propane or fuel oil. We'll go to them first. We call them the anchor customers. Typically they pay the majority of the initial fee for the build out of that facility. Once we get them up and running, then what happens is the people who are bringing the gas into us, either the producers or the pipeline, and if we say we were to connect to a pipeline, we would be dealing with other people who sell natural gas somewhere upstream on that pipeline to the people at Amphenol. They're generating revenue. We're generating revenue. We can build more pipe if we're generating revenue. It's going to sound funny when I say this, but as we're generating revenue, people at Amphenol and Meade-Westvaco will actually be saving money because natural gas is so much cheaper than propane or fuel oil. So it is truly a win-win situation. That's the big picture. Let me go back to what the Public Service Commission will look for specifically. They'll want to know the exact route of the pipe. They'll want to know the exact makeup of the pipe. In this particular instance, it'll be something called high-density polyethylene. It's a black plastic. It will operate at below 124 psi, so it's considered a low-pressure system. And I know some people have heard that, oh, if it's below 124 pounds, it's not regulated by anybody. That's totally wrong. We're regulated by the Federal government, the US DOT, under Part 192 for pipeline safety. We're regulated by the New York State Public Service Commission under code rules and regulations, Article 16, Part 255. It's about this thick. That's just for the construction of pipe. Our rates are totally regulated. How we deal with the customers are totally regulated. How we charge the customer is totally regulated. Let me go back to the design of the system. We have to justify to the Public Service Commission that we can economically get a pipeline from point A to point B, and that what the customer is going to pay for that facility is going to cover the cost of the facility that we're putting in. So the guy who lives in house A isn't subsidizing the guy who lives in house B, or anchor customer A isn't subsidizing anchor customer B. Everybody's delivery has to stand on its own. We add up all of the potential customers, we add up the cost of the project, the Public Service Commission looks at our allowed rate of return and says you can recover the cost of this project within 3 to 5 years, which is standard for us. If we can prove that, then we have to go through our whole environmental impact study and identify that where we put the pipe is not going to harm the environment, it's not going to put any kind of endangered species or protected species in harm's way. And then we get ready to build. Then we would come back to the town supervisors, the town engineers, and say, this is how deep it's going to be, this is how big it's going to be, this is the pressure it's going to operate under. They'll review it and say, okay, we're okay with your project, but instead of being on the east side of the street, we want it in the west side of the street. Instead of being 30 inches deep, we want you 54 inches deep. So it's all very highly regulated. It's all very highly controlled. We really don't get to do anything without the public knowing about it and without our regulatory bodies knowing about it. So that's the overview of how it would be built. Where we're looking at specifically is when we came up with the idea for this project about 4 years ago, we had looked at building a pipeline from the Millennium Pipeline in Broome County north almost all the way up to Cooperstown. And then beyond that up into Springfield, where
Richfield Springs?
Yeah, Richfield Springs, up where the Tennessee line is, and that's about 96 miles. That would have been about $150 million to do. And when we do the economics for that, it wouldn't have saved anybody along the route any money, because the gas cost to pay for that particular project would have been so high that you would have been better off staying on propane or fuel oil. So we kind of set the project aside. We had looked at the area in depth and we thought there's some potential here, but how can we get reliable supply? So we started to look at what was available in the way of local production. And at the time we were doing this, the moratorium was in place for Marcellus Shale.